Hi, I'm Brian Donovan from the Hudson Republican Committee, and I'm joined by Eric Rolfs from the Pelham Republican Committee. And Pelham and Hudson combined create District 37 for the state representative race. And we have 8 of the 11 Republican candidates on our program tonight. Eric, why don't you tell us a little bit about what we're going to be seeing here?
What we've prepared for you tonight is a brief introduction of the individual candidates and the platforms that they feel strongly about. Recently, Pelham and Hudson have joined forces to make our constituency better educated about our candidates, so that way all of our citizenry can know the individual candidates and we can put forth a better electorate.
Excellent, Eric. And one of the things I just want to say is that now that you're involved with the Republican committee in Pelham and trying to get that off the ground, you know, obviously we're going to be doing things together in the future. You're planning on having a regular scheduled meeting night. I think you found a place where you're going to be meeting on a regular basis?
Yep, we'll be meeting at the VFW Lodge in Pelham, New Hampshire. Right now, what we're doing is we're going around and we're trying to establish our donors. We're trying to establish our executive committee. So I highly encourage any Republican, whether you are a Tea Party Republican, moderate Republican, fiscal Republican, social Republican, any Republican, you are welcome in the Pelham Republican Party. We welcome all feedback. We welcome all grassroots ideas to establish us as a force in the state for change and to make yourself heard. For too long have we heard that Pelham had not been represented in state politics. Well, now we're going to make that change.
Right, and out of the 8 candidates we're going to be talking tonight, 2 of them obviously are from Pelham. So
That's right.
You're going to talk to those folks. I'm going to talk to the 6 from Hudson, and you're about to see those interviews that we just conducted. Okay, I'm joined by Lynne Ober and Russ Ober right now, and as our first candidates, Lynne, let me just start with you. Can you give us a little bit of background of your experience as a state rep over the last few years?
I've been a state rep for 8 years. I served on science and technology for 2 years, and then I switched to finance. I've also served on the municipal and county committee and on the special education committee for education funding reform. So I've been fairly involved. Right now I am chairing the committee that is evaluating the Liquor Commission. We redid it in 2009, and we're just doing a review to see how that reorganization is working and are we doing what we need to do.
Okay, good. And Russ, you've obviously been up in Concord for a while yourself. Why don't you give us a little bit of your background?
Same amount of time. I've been there 8 years as well. I served the first 2 terms on the Labor Committee as the clerk. And the last 2 years I've been on the Ways and Means Committee, also as the clerk. We, if I say we, meaning my wife and I, believe that we serve on the 2 most important committees in the State House. The Ways and Means Committee finds the revenues. The Finance Committee spends the revenues. So that makes it very exciting to be up there and be able to predict how much revenue will be coming in over a 2-year period starting in July of 13.
Okay. And Lynne, one of the themes that Speaker O'Brien often mentions is that the 2011 and 2012 Republican legislature really kind of started to have the state live within its means. What does that mean to you, and why is that important to our taxpayers?
What that means to us and to you and to every taxpayer is the same as what you do at home around the dinner table. Now, it's interesting that Russ sits on the Ways and Means Committee, which generates the revenue, and I sit on Finance that spends the money, because this is kind of like a dinner conversation. I want to buy a new chair. He tells me we don't have the money to cover it. So the state said for the last 2 years we will figure out the revenues first, and then the Finance Committee will live within that means and spend no more money than that. And we have done that. So we have lived pretty much like any other family around the dinner table. Here's our income. Can't spend any more than that.
And that's a bit of a change from previous terms.
It's a significant change. Over the previous 4 years, we had 100 tax increases to cover the extra spending. And I'll tell you that people in New Hampshire can notice a difference. We repealed the $30 surcharge that was on your car registration fee. So every year you registered your car, you pay an extra $30. If you and your husband, or if you have a spouse, have 2 cars, that's $60 a year, or $120 in your pocket that you didn't have before we got into live within your means.
And Russ, I'll ask you the same questions. And obviously, with you being on the Ways and Means Committee, you're very tied in with that, that concept.
That's the purpose of the Ways and Means Committee, is to see to it that the revenues are realistic. And if you think about it, we're talking about a $1 billion budget. And somehow the Ways and Means Committee must calculate 2 years out at exactly how much should be available to the finance people to spend. And if you think about that in your household, do you know how much money you will have for revenue 2 years from now? And if you do you already know how you're going to spend it? That's the hard part, is to make sure that that number is good. And the last number is just slightly off. It's 5% off, I believe, as of the end of September, which is much, much better than the $800 million it was off under the previous administration.
Now, we just talked about the fiscal aspect of it. So, looking forward to the next term, what would you think, or what would you say would be the important areas for the Republican legislatures to focus on in 2013 and 2014?
I think one of the things we plan to do is look ahead and do the same thing. We're going to go to Ways and Means first and say, how much revenue are we going to have? And then we're going to try to live within our means. We passed legislation this year that would start school construction aids. So towns that need to build new schools or need to renovate schools can begin to get money for that. We had a hearing this morning with Department of Education, and we discovered that it's going to start 1 year later than we wanted because they haven't been able to work out the rules. But it's a brand new methodology. We're going to give every school district that qualifies a grant equal to 80% of the aid they will get up front. School districts will bond fewer dollars, they will pay less interest, and there will be a smaller impact on taxpayers' pocketbooks via your property taxes. So it's got to behoove us to stay on the same fiscally conservative way. We haven't had any school construction aid, for example, for 4 years. And there's pent-up need. You need to keep your schools up. You need to keep your buildings up. We need to find a way to fund what we need to do for our citizens and yet live within our means, just like we do at home. And I've been talking to Russ about that because I wanted a Ferrari, and he keeps telling me I can't have it. So I'm afraid the Obers are going to continue to live within their means and have no Ferraris at home.
Right. Now, you've been up in Concord for a while, and obviously you've seen on the flip side, in previous administrations, it wasn't, the focus was not living within its means.
No.
So can you give us a little bit of your
Yes,
take?
I was on finance for all 4 years that the Democrats were in charge. The first 2 years they were in charge, the budget went up 17%. The second 2 years, the budget went up 12%. And we were in a severe recession. People in Hudson, people in Pelham are losing their jobs or going without a pay raise, and yet we were having to raise taxes via the Ways and Means Committee in order to fund the overspending. And it was hard because we would hear from constituents who said, I have no job, I don't know how I'm going to pay my property taxes, it's just gone up, and now I've got to pay an extra $30 to register my car and several other things. I have to pay a campground tax. We repealed that. The LLCs, small businesses, were taxed almost out of existence. We repealed that. We need to keep doing that.
With the changes that were made in the budget cycle in 2011 and 2012, what feedback are you getting from small business owners here in Hudson about those changes? And do they appreciate the fact that you were trying to cut those taxes?
Russ, myself, Jordan Ulery, Shawn Jasper, Andy Renzullo, and Bob Haefner have all been supported by small businesses, and they have endorsed us and our candidates because they can see that their taxes are less, and we have done positive things to help them grow their business and produce jobs for people in our state.
And Russ, let me just give you the same question. Again, we had a sense of the fiscal responsibility that we've seen coming out of the 2011 and 2012 cycle with the Republican leadership. Looking beyond that for the next cycle or the next session with 2013 and 2014, where do you think the focus needs to be as far as the Republican legislation?
I believe that we are going to work with business. Knowing the makeup or the present makeup of the Ways and Means Committee, it is very oriented toward reducing the taxation on businesses. Many people know there are two taxes on business. One is called the business enterprise tax, which every business pays based on how big your business is. The other is called the business profits tax, which is just what it says. The more you make, the more they take, as it is. Now, if we can reduce either or both of those taxes a little bit, a half a percentage point, a percentage point, this means all the businesses will have more money, more prosperous, which of course means they would like to expand, which of course means more jobs, which is the key in general to the Republicans is let's get some more jobs. Well, if my business is doing well, I obviously need to hire more people so I can do even better. So we're going to be putting a lot of emphasis on the business tax end of it, and hopefully we'll get it through. Now, people say, well, yes, but won't that give less money to finance to spend? Well, not necessarily, because you see, if you reduce the business taxes a little bit, businesses make more money, which means they make more profit, which means more taxes are paid in. So the bigger the business goes, the more taxes they pay. So in effect, we may actually end up with a bit more money in revenues as a reduction, as a result of the reduction in taxes.
Sure. And I remember when I first moved to New Hampshire, everybody used to talk about the New Hampshire advantage. But when you look at our tax rate right now in New Hampshire, I think a lot of people will be surprised to find out. I think we're ranked something like 45th or 46th as far as tax environment for businesses, and, which is really amazing.
We are rated pretty low. However, we have gone up a little bit under the last 2 years because of our reduction in some of the taxes and some of the regulations and some of the paperwork. The idea, of course, being that if we can make it better for businesses in the state, the businesses that are here are going to get expanded, but the businesses that are in a particular state south of us are going to say, you know, I can make more money in New Hampshire
Sure.
because the tax rate has gone down. That goes nationwide. We do have people moving into Nashua. As a matter of fact, 500 people moving into Nashua in a new company just this week. It was in the paper this morning.
That's excellent.
Which is what we're trying to do.
Exactly. Now, Lynne, you're on a couple committees.
I am.
Okay. So, again, looking forward, what's going to be the focus for you as far as some of your committee assignments and what you're going to try to do in the next year?
Well, committee assignments change, and I actually ended up chairing municipal and county, but only because Bev Ferranti, who was the chair, her father was critically ill and out of state, and she needed time to go there, and I just filled in for her. So it wasn't something I took over. I'm hoping to go back to finance. I want to continue to work to provide services and yet stay within the money given to us by Ways and Means. And I'm reconciled to the fact that we are not recovering from the recession as fast as we thought we were, although it is great to hear we have 500 new jobs in the area because that means 500 more people are going to work. So I want to stay with that. I want to work there. I've picked up a couple of extra assignments as we've gone along. Who knows what we'll need next biennium? I mean, that changes biennium to biennium. Mm-hmm. So whatever needs to be done, I'm happy to help out.
Mm-hmm. And Russ, other than the Ways and Means Committee, are you on another committee, or what's the focus for you, I guess, as far as committee?
Well, I would like to remain with Ways and Means. If you consider what that committee does, it takes at least 2 years simply to understand what's going on. The taxation complications in the state of New Hampshire are unbelievable. There are hundreds and hundreds of taxes, and we must look at every one of them if we want to reduce the taxes. Some of them are called fees. We don't mind if you have to pay a fee for receiving a service. What we do mind is if to pay a fee to a state agency and you don't get anything for it but a piece of paper. So I believe it takes at least 2 years simply to understand what Ways and Means is doing. So now I've done there 4 years, maybe 2 more years, I can really understand what's going on.
Okay, all right. Well, Lynne and Russ, I appreciate you guys spending some time with us today.
Thank you
Obviously,
for having us.
Best of luck.
Thank you.
On November 6th, and we hope all the Republicans here in Hudson and Pelham get out and support all of our candidates. So thanks
I
again.
agree. I think we have an excellent slate of 11 candidates, and I hope we get a lot of community
Vote for
support for
11.
all 11.
Exactly. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. We're here with our 2 candidates from Pelham tonight, our 2 non-incumbents, Charlene Tekesian and Patrick Culbert. Charlene, we'll start with you, a little brief introduction.
Hi, my name is Charlene Tekesian, and I live in Pelham, and I've lived there since 1977. I'm a Republican, and I've been a member of the Republican Party since I started to vote in 1965. I grew up in Methuen, Massachusetts. I graduated from Tenney High School. I went to Becker College in Worcester and graduated with an associate degree. I moved to Pelham in 1977 to raise my children. I've been the treasurer for the town since 1983, taking the town from a 3-stub checkbook to a completely computerized accounting system. I've served on the Board of Adjustment, the Sherburne Hall Committee, and I'm currently president of Pelham Community Spirit. I helped to raise over $60,000 for the renovation of Sherburne Hall and the Pelham Municipal Building. As a leader of the Pelham Community Spirit Group, I've been instrumental in bringing our summer concert series to Pelham. We just finished our 6th season. I also started the Southern New Hampshire Festival of Trees in Sherburne Hall, and this will be our 4th annual Festival of Trees. It starts the day after Thanksgiving and runs for a week. For the past 16 years, I've worked in Andover, Massachusetts for a company called North Star Ventures. We install and support Peachtree software, and I'm a senior certified Peachtree consultant. I have a solid background in computers, bookkeeping, and accounting, and I help our clients install, set up, and use the software. I'm married to Hal Lind. I have 6 children and 11 grandchildren. All my children have been raised in Pelham, and I have 2 more grandchildren on the way. I think that's it.
Okay. Patrick?
Yes, I was raised in Lowell, Mass, but don't hold that against me. I got taken to the Pawtucket school system and graduated from Lowell High. I attended Lowell Technological Institute, although I didn't graduate at this time, choosing to join the Air Force. I served 8 years with honorable discharge. I attended on my discharge, I attended Control Data Institute, received an associate's degree in computer engineering. I also got an associate's degree from Thomas College in Waterville, Maine, in business management, and attended Franklin Pierce in Salem, New Hampshire. I'm within 6 credits of earning my bachelor's degree. I was employed by Digital Equipment Corporation for 16 years, starting out as an electronic technician, ending up as a program manager before my layoff. I bought an appliance business. I ran it for 14 years, and I ended up with four stores. I sold them due to illness in the family. I then went to work. I took a year off, and then I went to work for Facilitech as a New Hampshire branch manager, got promoted to regional operations manager, covering for Virginia to Maine. I'm retired now due to a hemorrhagic stroke 5 years ago. By the way, October is my anniversary for 5 years. I served as a state representative in 1988 to 1990 session. I've been a planning board member for 22 continuous years, serving as chairman for 3 years, vice chair for 15 years. I've served on numerous committees in the town, some of them being Water and Sewer Committee, Codification Committee, Economic Development Committee, Master Plan Committee, Capital Improvements Plan, and Zoning Subcommittee. I participated in the Disability Legislative Series for the Government's Commission on Disability. I'm a long-term member of the American Legion, serving as commander for 2 years, senior vice for 1 year, and finance officer for 8 years. I suppose that ends it.
Okay. All right. Start with a legislative question. Charlene, even though you were not in Concord for the 2011-2012 legislative session, what accomplishments of the Republican legislature stand out in your mind?
Well, I would have to say, excuse me, the live within your means. I think that they did an 11% cut to the spending, which was substantial, but I think it was something that needed to be done. We can't continue to go on if we're going to continually raise our debt, and that goes on a local, state level, and a federal level. We can't introduce any new spending without a way to pay for it, and we'll never get out of debt if we keep overspending what we're collecting. I think that that's probably the best thing that the legislature did was enact that live within your means. I'm not sure if it was something that they like a rule that they enacted that they had to do, or if that's just what their mission was to bring down the spending. But whatever it was, I think that was one of the best things that they could have done.
But from an economic standpoint, your philosophy is to live within your means and to always curtail spending wherever possible.
I believe that to be true. There are some instances where I have been very involved in my town for 30 years, and I see that in some cases we do need to borrow money in order to be able to afford a capital improvement like a school or well, I'd say a fire station, except that we're just building the fire station now with paying for it within 1 year, which is going to be a big hit on our local property tax bill. But again, you save the money on the interest, and it, instead of having to deal with more debt, because the town does have some debt, it does curtail it. But there are sometimes that you do need to borrow money. But on an ongoing basis, I think that your operating budget should be your operating budget. If you need to borrow money for a specific reason, then so be it. But your operating budget, your day-to-day, I don't know. I'm going to say what Lynne said, even though I don't know whether that's been on yet or not. But even in your home budget, when you're trying to figure out what you need to buy, you need to live within your means. And personally, I'm in a situation right now where we're trying to replace a burner, we're replacing our water filter, the dryer's gone, everything is kind of like needing to be fixed at the moment. We've been in Pelham in our house for 20 years, and it seems like this is the turnover time for everything to start going. Mm-hmm. I'd like a new car. We can't get a new car because we need to do all these other things.
So you have to prioritize.
So you do need to prioritize your spending and decide where you're going to cut. Okay. And hopefully the cuts that we make are well thought out. I don't think we should cut education spending. I think we need to keep our university system up. And I think we need to worry about our bridges and our roads and our infrastructure. But our operating budget should be only what we collect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Patrick?
What?
I'll throw that question over to you.
Yeah.
Same question. What accomplishments of the Republican legislature stand out in your mind?
What stands out in my mind is the same as Charlene. Live within our means. It's a priority not to raise taxes. And even though I'm not an accountant, I don't profess to be one. It makes what makes common sense usually is true. And that's encourage small business, entrepreneurs, making New Hampshire a small business friendly state even more than it is now. That's all I have.
Okay. So fostering that environment and doing everything that you can to eliminate the burdens on small business, that's what you would prioritize, and that's what you admired about the Republican legislature.
Right.
Okay. All right. All right, so more of a fiscal platform. That's what you believe in.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Okay. Charlene, what would you say the Republicans in the House should focus on in 2013 throughout 2014?
I think we should continue more of the same. I think we should continue the living within your means, keep cutting the spending if we can. But again, the cutting spending is we need to prioritize what we're cutting. We can't be cutting, I'm going to say it again, education. I think our university system is excellent, and I think we need to maintain it. And I know roads and bridges. We have a bridge in Pelham that we've asked for state money for, and I think it was a 10-year program, and now I think it's turned into a 20-year program. The bridge needs to be fixed, and we need some help from the state with money to fix it. I don't know how that happens. I would like to get up there and get involved in how what the revenue is that's coming in and how we're spending the money that we have. But I think along the same lines that we need to just keep on going with that and keep beating down that debt and hopefully get rid of it.
Okay. Any other priorities that you feel that should be that would be a main priority for you once elected?
Well, I think jobs is, a key word that everybody's saying. We need to create more jobs. We need to create more jobs. I don't know how the government creates jobs. I think that it's nice to think that if you give somebody tax credits, they're going to hire a lot of people and grow their business. I'm not sure that happens. I don't know how the government can grow jobs, and maybe that's something that I can learn from other people that are up there already, from their experience.
Couldn't agree more.
But certainly jobs are definitely right up there with a priority.
Okay. Patrick, what would you say the Republicans in the House should focus on in 2013 and 14?
Increase of revenues. If he increased revenues and cut spending, we'd be in good shape for future years. Gambling will be an issue. I haven't made up my mind yet which way I'm going to go on it, but that's revenue stream. Encourage economic development committees in the towns that are faltering. Take advantage of available grants for education. One way to do this would be hiring a professional grant writer. The grant writer's job pays its weight in gold. That's all I have. Again.
Okay.
Short but sweet.
Okay. Charlene, if you were to serve in the next session of the New Hampshire legislature, what committee assignment would you want and why?
Well, that's an interesting question. Someone else had posed that question to me, so I went online and I looked to see what the committees were. And there's probably 25 or 30 committees. And they all seem to have their own function. And then there's special committees beyond that, and then there's other committees beyond that. So I'm not sure. My background is finance and accounting and technology. So I would say that probably that would be a good fit for me to be there to determine budget and spending and or technology. Municipal and county committee kind of interests me too, to see how state funding is affecting county and local, because I am definitely concerned about my local property taxes. When people say they can't afford things, it's property taxes, even my property taxes are getting up there. And I don't know, we seem to be getting some is a pushback from the state, some is a pushback from the federal government. And this particular year, it is our fire station, but those are the three committees that would interest me, okay, that I feel like I could contribute to.
Okay. Patrick?
That's a hard one, because I've had a stroke. I'd like to get involved with disabled and the brain injury group, and because they're the most needy. The elderly are the most needy for the most part. The brain injury folks need an advocate, and stroke victims need an advocate. So I would try and get on a committee that allows me to champion that.
There's a lot of veterans coming over from overseas with severe brain injuries too.
Yep,
That might be an option for you.
right,
So,
yeah.
well, well, great. Well, I wish you both luck, and hopefully Pelham sees the both of you in and elected in November.
Thank you very much.
So, thank you.
11 people are running, and 11 people should get elected.
Great.
Well, there's 22 people running, so but hopefully
Republicans.
11 Republicans will get elected.
Right. So, thank you for your time, and thank you. Good evening.
All right, I'm joined by Andy Renzullo and Bob Haefner. Andy, obviously you've been, you're very well known in Hudson with all the work that you've done. Why don't you just give us a brief overview?
Thank you, Brian, and thank you, Hudson Cable Television, for providing me this forum. Good evening. I'm Andy Renzullo. I've served 4 terms as a member of the New Hampshire House. I'm seeking a 5th term. I'd like one of the 11 votes you have to cast for these positions. I presently am chairman of the House Resources, Recreation, and Development Committee and a member of the Special Committee on Education Funding. In previous sessions, I've served as House Deputy Republican Whip. I've also previously served on the House Rules Committee and the Municipal and County Government Committee. I'm also a former co-chairman of the House Republican Alliance. It's a conservative group of Republicans and the largest self-identified group within the Republican Party in New Hampshire. I've co-sponsored legislation this session to reduce the rooms and meals tax, to repeal tax on gambling winnings, and to reduce business profits tax. I was the initiator of a prime sponsor of a law requiring the proper observance of September 11th, 2001. A passed piece of legislation in 2008 that I am most personally gratified about is I co-sponsored establishing Gold Star number plates for mothers of armed forces members lost in the defense of our country. I have received the endorsement of the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance. I have received the endorsement of the National Federation of Independent Businesses for my support of small businesses in New Hampshire. And tomorrow I will be one of 4 House members receiving a Legislator of the Year award for the Home Builders and Remodelers Association. I am on the Council of Advisors of Pro Gun New Hampshire and a 40-year member of the National Rifle Association with an A rating. I'm a 36-year resident of Hudson. I'm presently chairman of the Hudson Seniors Council on Aging. I was recently appointed to and now chair the Hudson Senior Affairs Committee. And we will reach our goal of a Senior Center for Hudson. I've previously served on the Planning Board, Budget Committee. My last town office was Town Council President when we had it. I'm a retired engineer, a former co-owner of the Hudson Litchfield News, a Bachelor of Science in Chemical Engineering, Master in Chemistry, Juris Doctor in Law. Everything I've told you is what I've done, not about who I am. I'm the grandfather of Rebecca, Josh, Nick, and little AJ, who's just 2 months old. I'm the father of Carla, Rob, and Jim. I've been a husband of Faith Renzullo for more than 4 decades. So if anybody asks you, that's who Andy Renzullo is. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. And Bob, same situation. Obviously, you've been in politics in Hudson here for a while, but why don't you give us an overview again?
Thank you, Brian. I guess the first thing I'd like to say is I've been in town for 37 years. I've put all 3 of my kids through the Hudson school system, and we've now got 3 grandchildren in the Hudson school system. I am a 3rd-term legislator. I am currently the chair of the Committee on Environment and Agriculture. I guess we're the environmental team here. I have served 2 terms as well on legislative administration and 1 on election law. My background to get here was I put in 8 years in the Hudson Budget Committee. I've also put in 8 years in the Hudson Conservation Commission, 2 of them as the chair. I was cemetery trustee for 5 years, 4 of those as the chair. I belong to the Alvern High School's Vocational Advisory Council, and I spent 2 years on the County Executive Committee. Within some of my legislative kind of extracurricular things, I am active in the Council of State Governments. In fact, I'm one of the 2 New Hampshire Executive Committee members to the Council of State Governments. I belong to an organization called State Agriculture and Rural Leaders. It's really the chairs from House and Senate from all 50 states. I've been quite active in that. And for whatever it's worth or not worth, I just came back, well, the end of August, from the University of Pennsylvania, where I attended the Eastern Leadership Academy. I am at other organizations. I'm very active in the Grange. I belong to Hudson Grange. I am the master of the Hillsborough County Grange. I am an officer in the State Grange, and that has taken me to not national office, but at least involvement with the National Grange. I am a director of the Historical Society. I'm a member, although inactive, in the American Legion, and I serve with Andy on the Senior Council. I'm retired from Hewlett-Packard, where I spent 36 years in people management, project management, and process management. I spent time in materials education and training, as well as engineering. I was a member of the U.S. Marine Corps Reserve. I've got a master's degree in management and a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration. And like Andy, I've received 2 or 3 different endorsements. I won't go into those, but I also have an A- rating with the NRA.
Excellent. Thank you, Bob. Andy, let me just ask you our first question. These are the same questions that we're asking all of the candidates. But one of the themes that Speaker O'Brien likes to talk about is living within our means, which I think really, kind of shows what they did, or you guys did in 2011 and 2012. What is living within your means? Why is that important? And what does that mean to you as far as your job up in Concord?
Well, living within its means, it means that government should live the same way families do. You have to live within your means. You have to live within the money the revenues that come in, and you have to the expenses you have to balance that. I mean, in the 4 preceding years to when we in 2010, when we took back the House and the Senate, the opposition, they spent like drunken sailors. It was, I apologize to the sailors in the audience.
Bob's a Marine, so.
Yeah, well, at any rate, they increased the budget 24%. They had over 100 increases in taxes and fees, because government's different. They can, if they want extra money, they can just go out and take it from the people. Well, the people figured that was not a good thing. And so they asked us, fix it. They asked us, and that's why we won the election in the 2010 election. It was a large majority. Well, unfortunately, they had created this budget and this government infrastructure that put us $800 to $900 million in the hole. If you wanted to do what does that mean? It means that if you wanted to do the same thing that you did last time, this time you had to come up with an extra $800 to $900 million, because there just was not the revenue there. I mean, they had spent all of the stimulus and things like that. We pledged no new taxes. We kept our pledge. We lowered the budget by 11% from the previous budget. This isn't government speak. This is, we're spending $1.2 billion less now than when the state did 2 years ago.
Bob, same question to you. You know, living within its means. You know, why is that such a focus for us up in Concord?
I hope I don't repeat too much of what Andy just said, because he did a great job in saying pretty much what I think. For me, living within our means we have a balanced budget. We're using realistic revenue estimates, which had been a problem in the previous 4 years. Not borrowing money to cover operating expenses, which had been done in the previous 2 or 4 years as well. And we did it with no increase fees or taxes. In fact, we reduced a couple. And that was because, like Andy described, the one-time money really put us in this huge hole. And again, at the risk of saying what Andy did, budgets had gone up 24% in previous 4 years. We reduced them by 11. But that means over a 6-year period, we still increased spending in the state of New Hampshire by 13%. That doesn't sound like a draconian cut to me. And I think the way the cuts were done were fair because they were across the board. Everybody, with the exception of the prison system, got something in the area of a 10% cut. They were each commissioner was asked to come in with an amount for a 10% reduction, and they could choose what would be most effective for them. And I think that was a fair way to do it.
Now, Andy, let me just ask you, so we talked a little bit about what the accomplishments were in the 2011 and 2012 session. What do you think the Republicans should focus on in the next session?
Well, Brian, I think there's going to be a pressure to go back to the bad habits that got the state in trouble in the first place. We've got to be on guard against that. We've got to work against that. New Hampshire doesn't have a revenue problem. It has a spending problem. The focus in the coming year should be to reinforce the gains that we've made in many areas, not just in finance and budgeting, but in education, personal freedoms, regulatory reform. I think regulatory reform, especially in my committee and probably in Bob's committee, is going to be a big item. We live in the live free or die state. How come the live free or die state is one of the most regulated states in the nation? With some 130 occupations that require occupational licensing. There's a mountain of rules. It takes a while to comb through all that red tape and see if you can find the nut in amongst all of the chaff.
Yep, that's a good point. Bob, same question for you. What do you think the Republicans should focus on in the next session?
Well, I too think we have to balance the budget, use realistic revenues. That's just got to continue. I'm a believer in small, and I don't mean no government, but small government that's efficient and effective. So we need to continue to pursue that. Where possible, we want local control. I think, and some members of my party may disagree with me, but I think we need to restore some of the funding to the university system. We cut, well, the state provides 6% of the funding for the university system. We cut it in half this year. I think that's caused them to get more efficient. I think they are probably cutting out some waste there, and maybe now it's time to restore some of that so that our students aren't paying astronomical tuitions. And the last thing I'd say is we need to create an environment, and Andy really alluded to it, where we can attract business, can attract jobs, and retain those once they're here. And a lot of that is regulatory reform.
Okay. Well, you guys only have a couple minutes left, but my final question is, and Andy, I'm not sure what committee that you're on. Why don't you let us know? But from your committee point of view, what would be the priority for next year?
Right. I'm Resources, Recreation, and Development. In my committee, we have a part of the Department of Environmental Services, and what is sorely needed, and we almost had it this time around, was a comprehensive permit. Right now, if you try to build a large project, you have alteration of terrain permits, you have sewage disposal permits, you have wetlands, and you have shoreline protection. Each is a separate permit. Each costs you time, money, a lot of effort, and a lot of uncertainty. By the way, the department wants this because of its increased efficiencies, to be able to have a single unified permit that someone can go in to gets everybody around the table. Everybody knows what's needed. Everybody's talking to each other. It's faster. It saves duplication, inefficiency. It's quicker, friendlier. It's a win-win for everybody, and it helps business and helps jobs.
Excellent. Bob, same question to you. From your committee assignment point of view, what's going to be the priority?
For me, from my committee assignment point of view, clearly I'm the ag guy up there. And that will be to promote New Hampshire agriculture. I don't think most people realize that we have almost 4,200 farms in New Hampshire. And every one of those 4,200 farms is a small business, and they employ people across the country. I'm assuming it's the same in New Hampshire. About 12% of the population is involved somehow in agriculture. This county, Hillsborough County, of the 3,000 counties across the U.S., we're number 37 in direct sales to consumers. And I think we need to build on that. And, we've got 4,200 small businesses, and let's help them out so that they can return money to the state.
Excellent. Excellent, Bob. Well, guys, thanks a lot for joining us, and thanks for your service up in Concord, and good luck on November 6th.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm joined by Shawn, Jasper, and Jordan Ulery, obviously two of our representatives. And Shawn, let me just start with you. Obviously, you're super active in the town. Most folks know you, but why don't you give us a brief overview of your background?
All right. Well, I've always had an interest in politics in town. Started going to town meetings probably when I was 12 or 13. Ran and was elected to the budget committee when I was 21, and have been involved in town and state politics pretty much ever since in various roles. Most people probably know that I was a longtime selectman. And during the last 28 years, I've been in the New Hampshire House. For 18 of those years, when our daughter was born, I did take off 8 years from the legislature, and have been very active since then. I have served 3 times as the Republican whip, and for people who don't really understand what the whip is, that's a question that I get asked quite frequently. It really is from the Old English, when the job of the whip was to whip the members of Parliament into line to get them to vote the way the Prime Minister wanted to, and that's carried over. So the whip's job is essentially to count the votes and make sure that when the Speaker of the House has an agenda item, that before it goes to a vote, the Speaker knows what the count is going to be, and he can plan accordingly based on the votes. It's really not to arm twist. In the New Hampshire House, there really aren't any perks that we have to take away from too many people, other than people who might be a chairman or something like that. So for the rank and file, it's just to talk with them, explain what's going on. So that's my job there. I've been involved in a number of other things in town. I was a call firefighter for 20 years. My goal right from the beginning has always been to try to keep our taxes reasonable in Hudson, providing services. I think we've had a town government that's done that very responsibly. If you look at where Hudson is compared to any other community, we're very, very favorable. And in the state government, I try essentially to do the same thing. And I think we're in fairly decent shape, although we certainly suffered during the 4 years that the Democratic Party was in control, and that's one of the reasons that I think it's important that we elect a slate from Hudson of 11 Republicans to the New Hampshire House.
Yep. Great. Thanks. And Jordan, ask the same question. Obviously, you're very well known in Hudson, but give us a brief overview.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I got my BA degree from St. Anselm College. We moved to New Hampshire way back when my father got a job working for Hugh Gregg across the river. I have the degree in classical political science and minor in philosophy. After that, I forsook that and went into emergency medicine in Boston and Lowell, and I became one of the first nationally registered paramedics in the country, working in those communities. Even got up at Briar Motor Sport Park and did the motorcycle races, which was a lot of fun in the late 70s and early 80s. Currently, I work on Ways and Means at the State House. I also work on the Legislative Ethics Committee, and I was appointed to the Special Committee to investigate the State Liquor Commission. As a rep of Hudson, Litchfield, and Pelham, I've been able to get involved in those three communities, and I'm looking forward to working with Pelham and Hudson in the smaller district that we have now, which is good. I'm also the vice chairman of the Hillsborough County delegation. A lot of people don't understand that every rep wears two hats. One is for the county. That is, your work within the county to administer the county functions, the sheriff's department, the corrections facility, the county farm, the nursing home, and some of the county property that exists around in order to facilitate the services to the people through those various functions. And working as a vice chair, you get to be intimately involved in budget preparations. I've lived on the personal side, I've lived here in town since 1972 when I married my college sweetheart. I've been with her through thick and thin since then. We have two boys, one of whom is in health insurance sales and one of whom is a gunnery sergeant in the Marine Corps until February. Thank heavens he'll be out. There were a couple of times where you wore out the carpet worrying about that. I have 4 grandchildren, Alexis, Chelsea, Taylor, and Matthew. 1. I have 2 boys and 1 grandson. So I don't know what happened there. I'm supposed to have all grandsons. But that's the way things are. I'm a member of the NRA, and I'm an advisor for Procon New Hampshire, which is a legislative advisory group.
Okay. Thanks, Jordan. Shawn, let me ask you the first question, the same question we've been asking for all the other state reps. Speaker O'Brien has often talked about living within our means, or the means of the state. You know, what does that mean to you, and why is that so important to us Republicans?
Well, I think what we have seen is that for Republicans and Democrats, it means 2 different things. With the Democrats, it's, you know, what do we want to spend, and then going out and figuring out how much we need to tax to do that. And that's one way of looking at living within your means, because that is the fundamental problem with government when you have the ability to go out and say, whatever we take from the populace, whatever they're willing to spend, that's how much we have. And I think the Republican philosophy is different than that. We look at what we have to spend, how much our taxes are bringing in, and that's how much we have to spend. Now, of course, there are some extraordinary cases where there are things that we absolutely have to do as a society, and there are cases when those taxes have to be adjusted, and that is the balancing act. Certainly in a bad economy, that shouldn't be an option. The families of New Hampshire are struggling, and there should be no reason for us to go out and take more from people. So we need to figure out how we provide the services that are needed within the monies, the revenues that are coming in from the existing taxes.
Very good. Jordan, same question. Living within its means, as far as the state legislation or legislature is concerned, what does that mean to you, and why is it important?
Well, living within your means it's a headline. It's nothing more than a headline. But it encapsulates the core principles that have guided our work this past year. We limit ourselves to realistic revenue estimates. In the past, I was sitting in Ways and Means and listening to the former majority party come in and say, just create a number, we're going to spend it anyway, essentially. This year, the revenue estimates that we made within the committee after some hard work came very close to being what the actual revenues were. It also means that we spend only based upon the money that we have available. You don't spend based upon somebody else's money, a credit card, if you will, or tapping into the rainy day fund as what has been done in the past, but only on the money that comes into the state from the revenues that are derived. And then we needed to prioritize our spending. Ways and Means isn't finance. Finance does the strict prioritization, but Ways and Means can guide finance as to where the money is coming from so that we can live within our means and provide those services that need to be provided on a priority base.
Excellent. Shawn, now that we talked a little bit about what the Republicans did in 2011 and 2012, what do you think the focus for the Republicans up in Concord should be for the next two-year cycle?
Well, I do think it should be the economy and the jobs. And obviously, as a small state, there's not a lot we can do to affect the national economy, and very often the national economy trumps what we do here. But what we can do, and what I think we should do, is look at the unnecessary regulation that we have. We've really put a lot of a big damper on businesses because it becomes so hard to operate, so hard to even know what those regulations are. We've made a little bit of improvement, but we were in a position where we were 50th in terms of the business climate. We're at 47th now or something like that. We need to move that. We need to have a government that is responsive to the needs of small business, because all of us who work are employed by business, really, unless you're working for the government. And we all can't be employed by the government, so we've got to figure out how do we attract good businesses here, how do we allow people to create the startup businesses, because most people don't work for BAE or the other large organizations. They work for the smaller businesses. That's what we really have to be concerned about. That's what we need to focus on, and making sure that, again, we have a responsible budget that keeps the spending low and doesn't overly burden the taxpayers.
And Jordan, since you mentioned the focus on 2011 and 2012, what do you personally want to see the focus of the Republicans up in Concord for 2013 and 2014?
Well, I think Shawn was correct. One of the things we need to do is really focus on the needless regulations upon business. Yeah, I like to say that you need a stop sign at an intersection every once in a while. That's one of the functions of government. But we have so many regulations about what can be sold in stores and what type of a container and how your mind just begins to boil when you listen to the different agencies come before you to say, well, we need to raise the fee so we can implement. No, you don't. That's, I suppose, the headline for this question would be stay the course. We need to work on these things in order to redirect some money back into the rainy day fund, which has been almost drained. It's kind of ironic that Hillsborough County, in its county rainy day fund, has more money than the state does in its rainy day fund. How did that happen? It happened because people in Concord spent money. So we need to be careful of that. Everyone's heard about the fiscal cliff that takes place in January. That's on the national scale. But it's going to have an effect upon the county and the state. It's going to have an effect upon each of us in 13 and into 14. So we're going to have to be very careful with revenue estimates, and spending.
Excellent. And Shawn, last question. I know that you're on the Labor Committee. What's going to be the focus of you and that committee for next year?
Well, I don't have any idea if I'll be back on that committee, but what I think that the Labor Committee should be focused on and the legislature should focus on is dealing with public contracts. There's been a lot of talk about right to work, which I support, which doesn't mean the abolition of labor unions. What it means to me is that labor unions need to be more responsive to the needs of their constituents, the people in their labor union. What's happened, I think, is that they've become too political and not focusing on how they really help them in the workplace, but using the dues as a political agenda. So I do support that, but I think that everyone should have the right to unionize and enter into collective bargaining. The problem that I have is that once the voters reject a contract, or the labor union and the town or the city or the state don't reach agreement, and that contract expires, that should be a contract that expires just like if you and I had a work contract to perform services for a company. The contract is done. You no longer do that. You're now essentially an employee at will, and you work under the rules that exist for other non-employee unionized employees. People say, oh, well, you're going to have to negotiate with the individuals. No, you don't. Every town, every city has personnel policies, and you fall under those. Now, they might have to look at the job classifications but and do some work there, but it's not a matter of negotiation. In this country, the latest figure I heard, and this is the big secret, we talk about the $16 trillion that the federal government owes. This country as a whole has over $110 trillion in unfunded liabilities in health care, in labor contracts, and those things. And that's why we need to get back to the basics of saying we have to get these issues under control. And right now, there is an advantage to a labor union in many cases to say we're better off without a COLA, cost of living increase, because we've got all these benefits. And that's got to stop. So for me, that's the priority, is contracts need to end when they expire. And you can negotiate, but you can't continue with an unexpired contract.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. I just read something, I think it was yesterday, where state of California alone, it's a $34 trillion unfunded liability.
Right.
And you can't. That's just totally unsustainable. Jordan, same question for you. Ways and Means. What's going to be the focus for next year?
I spoke with the current chairman, and hopefully he'll get reelected, and hopefully I'll get back on Ways and Means. I never enjoyed numbers in school, but I enjoy Ways and Means. I think the key focus in Ways and Means is going to be on reducing taxes in order to increase revenues. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but if you take a look at what John Kennedy did and what Ronald Reagan did with the tax rates and how that increased revenues, I think we can do that here in this state as well on a smaller level. The key, however, is to reduce the spending. And I think if we've got 11 people here in this district that are willing to work on reducing spending and reducing taxes to increase revenues so that we can fund some of the needed functions of government, but at the same time, reduce the burden on all of us. We need to stimulate businesses in this state and to get them to stay in this state. We have no income tax. We have no sales tax. We are one of the few states that can attract people. But in order to attract them, we're going to have to make it comfortable for the businesses here, which means making it profitable for a business to operate. I talk to the people at Dinery frequent all the time, and they feel that it's essential to reduce the taxes that they have to pay so that the small operation like the diners in town can continue to employ people and make more than a living wage, a comfortable wage for their employees.
All right. Well, thank you. Guys, that runs up to our amount of time. I appreciate your spending some time with us. And I also want to just say thanks for your efforts up in Concord. We greatly appreciate it. And best of luck on November 6th.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.